their response to this terrible, tragic incident. Police responded immediately and courageously, getting victims to the hospital and successfully apprehending the armed suspect in a short amount of time, likely preventing more deaths. And may I say, that scene must have been chaotic. They were taking active fire, scooping people up, trying to get them to the hospital to save them, and our officers deserve our debt of gratitude for their courage and for their commitment to Philadelphians. And I'm frustrated and outraged that mass shootings like this continue to happen in communities across the United States. This country needs to re-examine its conscience and find out how to get guns out of dangerous people's hands. A person walking down a city street with an AR-style rifle and shooting randomly at people while wearing a bulletproof vest with multiple magazines is a disgraceful but all too common situation in America. And I was today at Independence Hall, where they wrote that Constitution, and the Second Amendment was never intended to protect this. This was a terrible, tragic situation that has traumatized the community. We are begging Congress to protect lives and do something about America's gun problem. Now I'll turn it over to Police Commissioner Outlaw for updates on this incident.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, I would like to express my deepest condolences to the families, friends, and all of those affected by this senseless act of violence. Our hearts go out to them during this unimaginably difficult time. Everyone you see here today and not here in this room is committed to finding answers to what happened last night and seeking justice for the victims and their families. As the investigation into this tragic incident continues, I kindly ask for your patience and your understanding. Our investigators are working tirelessly to gather and analyze all available evidence, ensuring a thorough and comprehensive investigation. It is crucial that we allow them the time and resources necessary to uncover the truth, which includes the why. That said, let me be crystal clear. What happened last night in our Kingsessing neighborhood was unimaginably disgusting and horrifying. On what was supposed to be a beautiful summer evening, this armed and armored individual wreaked havoc, firing with a rifle at their victims, seemingly at random, shooting 7, killing 5, including children, babies. Such an act of violence is abhorrent and goes against everything we stand for in this community. I, too, would like to take a moment to recognize the valor of our courageous officers, the actions of our 12th District officers and supervisors last night. These officers swiftly and immediately responded to a radio call reporting a person with a gun and an active shooting situation in the 1600 block of South 56th Street. While tending to victims at that location, they heard multiple gunshots at the intersection of 56th Street and Kingsessing Avenue. Some of the responding officers promptly tended to the wounded and rushed them to an area hospital, while others fearlessly ran toward the sounds of gunfire. With remarkable bravery and determination, they pursued the suspect on foot as they fled from Kingsessing Avenue onto Fraser Street, all while they continued to discharge their weapon. The officers persisted in their pursuit along Fraser Street and successfully apprehended the suspect in the rear alley of 1600 Fraser Street without any further incident or injury. Again, I commend these officers for their unwavering bravery. Their swift actions undoubtedly saved additional lives. At this time, I want to emphasize that we currently have no reason to believe that there are additional suspects or an ongoing threat to the community as it relates to this incident. We're confident that we have the individual responsible in custody. However, we do ask for your continued patience and cooperation, as I mentioned before, as we meticulously piece together the events leading up to this heinous act. I want to assure the public that the Philadelphia Police Department is fully committed to ensuring the safety and security of our communities. We will exhaust all efforts in our pursuit of justice for the victims, the families, and the neighborhood. In closing, I want to express our gratitude for the support and understanding of the public and the media during this challenging time. Your cooperation is essential as we worked alongside our law enforcement partners to uncover the facts and provide some semblance of closure to this devastating event. Please continue to keep everyone involved in this and affected by this uplifted in prayer. Now I'd like to invite Staff Inspector Ernest Ransom, the commanding officer of our homicide unit, to provide the case details as we currently know them. Staff Inspector.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so good afternoon. So yesterday evening, approximately 8:28 p.m., officers from the 12th District responded to a radio call person with a gun shooting at 1600 South 56th Street. Officers then located multiple shooting victims at several locations. They were suffering from multiple gunshots to the body. 6 shooting victims were transported to Penn Presbyterian Medical Center, where 4 of the victims were pronounced dead. 2 of the victims are currently listed in stable condition. 2 additional juveniles are treated in area hospital, one suffering from a gunshot wound to the leg, the other sustained injuries to the eyes caused by shattered glass. Those individuals, again, are listed in stable condition. All right, based on our witnesses, interviews, and recovered video, the suspect, while wearing body armor, a ski mask, and holding a AR-15 assault rifle, was observed at several locations near 56th Street, near Chester Avenue and Springfield Avenue. The suspect then began shooting aimlessly at occupied vehicles and individuals on the street as they walked. The suspect fired at vehicles being operated by a mother who was driving her set of twins home. One of the twins suffered a gunshot wound to the leg. Their siblings sustained sustained injuries to the eyes from shattered glass. So while assisting shooting victims, officers heard multiple gunshots in the area and observed the suspect. After a brief foot pursuit, officers made contact with the suspect in the rear alleyway of Springfield Avenue. Officers engaged that suspect where they were able to apprehend the suspect without incident. Officers were able to locate a 9mm handgun and an AR-15 style assault rifle. None of the victims engaged the suspect or were aware the suspect was going to inflict this act of violence upon them. We believe the deceased victim at the location inside of 1600 South 56th Street was the first shooting victim. However, due to the victim being home alone, the victim was not discovered by family members until hours after the incident. Our deceased again is Lashad Merritt, a 20-year-old male, a Damar Stanton, a 29-year-old male, a Ralph Morales, a 59-year-old male, a Dejon Brown, a 15-year-old male, and a Joseph Warmoth Jr., a 31-year-old male. The investigation, again, is currently being reviewed by the District Attorney's Office. The suspect, as of now, has not been charged. We do expect charges to become forthcoming. So I will now turn it over to District Attorney Krasner.
Good afternoon. I want to echo and support all the comments that you have heard from the mayor, the police commissioner, and the more specific comments about the investigation itself. I agree with every bit of it, and I don't want to repeat it. But there are a couple things I do want to say. First of all, there are different things that a prosecutor's office does in a situation like this. And the first thing that we do, at the same time as we're providing whatever assistance is needed to law enforcement in its investigation, is we try to make sure victims, survivors, witnesses, and other people traumatized by an absolute nightmare happening on the street have their needs addressed. And make no mistake, what the police officers went through out there, a couple of whom I spoke with just this morning when I was out there, having to scoop injured or dying people into a vehicle at a time when there are shots going off everywhere, when they have no way to protect their own backs, having to do that is rough. Having to do it all night is rough. Getting 2 hours of sleep and then being back out there this morning is rough. There's a lot of people who had a very, very hard time last night. But our first step is to reach out to those who have been affected. And for that reason, we are happy that there are 58 people who work in the DA's office on victim witness issues, including the grant-funded CARES team the purpose of which is to deal with the families of homicide victims intensively for the first 45 days. All of them have been deployed, with the single exception of the 15-year-old victim who was not identified until recently. We have been in contact with every single family, trying to do whatever we can to support them, and there is so much support that they need at this phase. We will continue to work with them, but also work with the community that is deeply, deeply affected by what happened out there. I can tell you what I saw this morning. What I saw this morning on a beautiful July 4th, when the temperature wasn't too hot. This morning there were little sprinkles, but it was otherwise a beautiful day, was completely empty streets. I saw every porch empty. I saw every door closed. I saw every curtain where there was a curtain pulled. I saw no kids playing. I saw a bicycle that had been left there from the time of the shooting, sitting on a corner untouched, apparently untouched for 12 or more hours. Nobody coming out to move it, to take it, to touch it, or anything else, as if everybody understood what happened here was so horrible that for right now, this is a desert. And for right now, everything that we associate with celebrating 4th of July is off. That was step one for us. Step two for us is the charging. I've been in close contact with the head of our homicide non-fatal shooting unit, with the very experienced attorney who is assigned to this case. We are well aware of a lot of investigative details that we are not in a position to put out here and will not put out here. But I can tell you this, the man who did this is in custody. The man who did this will be facing multiple counts of murder and will also be facing multiple counts of aggravated assault as a first-degree felony, weapons charges, among others. We will be able to be more specific tomorrow. It is expected that the preliminary arraignment, which is the first public event in a case like this, where bail will be set at held without bail. In other words, this is a person who is never going to leave jail before the trial, and it is my expectation is never going to leave jail, period. But the first public event will be occurring tomorrow, either during the workday in the morning or possibly later in the afternoon, depending upon the demands that are placed upon this queue by which people come up for their arraignment. At that time, it will be possible to say more publicly, although not everything. Understand, we are in a situation where some of the detectives working hardest on this did not sleep all night. And I know this because I need to have a really well-written affidavit of probable cause for the purpose here. And I am well aware that the detective who was working on that, I'll keep his name out of it, had to get some sleep. He'd been up without any kind of rest all night, and he was out there this morning again. But he needed a few hours sleep so he could write the best affidavit you can write, because that's what we need to prosecute a case properly. So phase one for us was really to reach out and try to support all those so adversely affected. Phase two is the beginning of a vigorous criminal prosecution of a truly atrocious, horrific act. It will either be prosecuted by this office or possibly by the feds. If so, they will have our complete cooperation, as they always do, and we always look forward to working with them jointly. Finally, I just want to say this. It is disgusting, the lack of proper gun legislation that we have in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I cannot agree more heartily with the mayor. It is disgusting that you can go to New Jersey and find a whole list of reasonable gun regulation that we don't have, that you can go to Delaware and there's almost as long a list of reasonable gun legislation that we don't have. Some of that legislation might have made a difference here. And it is time for everybody in our legislature, including the ones who would like to walk around with an AR-15 lapel pin, it is time for every one of them to face the voters. And if they're not going to do something, then the voters are going to have to vote them out, because that's what that lapel pin means. It means vote me out. I am against you, and I am against your safety. And a lot of us have had enough of it. I can tell you I certainly have had enough of it. I would ask everyone, I know how painful this is, how emotional it is, everyone who is there, we intend to help you any way we can. We know the police department does. We know the city does. We intend to help you any way we can. Please do not think in terms of any kind of violent response. Please do not think in terms of anything other than peace on the streets, the man who has done this horrible thing is in a jail cell. He's going to stay there. You cannot get to him to hurt him. So please do not hurt anyone else. Thank you.
I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Commissioner, and for the DA as well, you mentioned that this man was wearing bulletproof vest, had the handgun, had the AR-style rifle. Is there any reason to believe this was a premeditated attack against this community?
Again, there's only so much that we can divulge at this time, but I think it is safe to say that with the evidence that we do have available to us, that these acts were done knowingly and intentionally.
Commissioner, how are you trying to determine the motive, the suspect motive?
Well, that's for the investigators to find out. I mean, it's not just going back and speaking to witnesses, but it's also once we get the ability to speak to the suspect as well, and then also identifying any communications that have been made by the person in custody prior as well.
You mentioned a secondary suspect yesterday that had been arrested. We understand that individual was released and not charged. Is there any reason behind that?
There is a second person who was investigated. The investigation is ongoing, but I can tell you based upon limited information I have that we do not see a basis for concluding that that person's discharge of a firearm was illegal. When you are under fire in a mass shooting, there are rights to protect others and rights to protect yourself. Obviously, the investigation is not complete, but we are not in the practice of holding people in custody when we don't have probable cause and when we believe that their actions were lawful. That's all I can say on that point at this time.
Go over here first. We're going to go over here first, ma'am. Any of your victims were a specific target of this, or he was just randomly picking people in the streets?
Not at this time.
So nobody was, as of right now, a specific target?
Not at this time, no.
Can
Ma'am.
you ask her? It's fine.
Ojalá que sí.
¿Tienen alguna idea de dónde esa persona consiguió una R-15 y todo el equipo que estaba portando?
No sabemos en este momento dónde el defendiente obtuvo su arma, pero estamos investigándolo.
Ms. Roll?
Individuals have been charged with saying they're obviously would have vetted them completely.
Well, I can't say if his criminal history would have prevented him from possessing any weapons, but again, as you said, he has not been criminally charged as of yet. So again, that will be investigated. That's part of our investigation.
Ms. Johansson?
Just as a kind of an understanding of the timeline here, the first victim you said was found inside the house a couple hours after. When do we believe that the shooting started? And were people outside enjoying like 4th of July festivities for that?
Well, we got the initial call at, right here. So we get called at 8:28. We find the last shooting victim at 12:19. So it's a possibility it happened prior to 8:28. But
Do you think that it was like July 4th festivities at all, or like people being outside, or?
no, there's no indication that that was the issue at all. We believe it appears this individual acted alone and did what he did for whatever the reasons may have been. Not that he was targeting any individuals.
Ma'am?
Would you categorize the second person that was arrested that was let go, their actions as a good Samaritan? Were they trying to defend themselves and others in that situation?
Well, what I can say is he wasn't charged in this particular situation. Based on the evidence that we have recovered, and again, as the district attorney stated, this investigation is still ongoing. It appears he did act in self-defense.
Ma'am?
Were the guns that the individual was using traceable specifically to AR? Were they those guns?
That I cannot discuss right now.
The suspect was pretty active on social media. Had he come to the PPD's attention before for his post about firearms and that sort of thing?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, this is going to be the last question. Any other additional updates we get, we're going to put out via press release. Thank you so much for getting out here. Oh, one more.
Are there any security changes or upgrades to what's going on for July 4th celebrations tonight in light of what happened last night? No.
This incident had nothing to do with July 4th or tonight's concert. Last year's incident had nothing to do with July 4th and the concert. It happened a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles away. To link these incidents with the July 4th celebration is wrong. It's wrong and it's not helpful. We will have adequate security this year, as we did last year, as we did the year before, all the way back to other mayors. Nothing happened on the footprint of the site. And this is Kingsessing, and it's not even close to where the concert's going to be. And the person's in custody. There's no issue of any kind of a conspiracy. So the linkage is false.